always. And this is the podcast where we have honest, unfiltered conversations about lots of things. Today, I'm joined by Malisa Hepner, a licensed clinical social worker, an author, a podcast host, and a speaker who brings together professional expertise and her own lived experience of complex trauma. Melissa's work focuses on so many things, but helping people quiet the noise and move beyond overthinking and perfectionism is one of her fortes. She helps them reconnect with themselves and feel safe enough to be seen. Um, something she's also navigating something no parent should ever have to experience. And I don't want to go without saying this. In December 2025, Melissa lost her 18-year-old son, Jake, to an accidental overdose. And she has chosen to live both her grief and her healing out loud, showing what it can look like to survive unimaginable loss without pretending that healing is neat, linear, and perfect. And I didn't want to start the show without mentioning such a huge thing. So thank you so much, Melissa, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
I'm so glad you're here.
Me too.
Before we start, I want to ask you one question, but recently I've started to realize it's a bit of a shitty question. Nobody really likes it and nobody can really answer it, but I'm going to ask you and you can answer it in whatever fashion you like. So before we
Okay.
get into everything, who is Melissa? That might be who's Melissa now. That might be who's Melissa in the past. That might be who's Melissa in the future. But who is the essence of Melissa?
Okay. Who am I? It's funny because I have a 24-year-old in this class at college that university in other countries, but he asked me some questions. Yeah, he had to interview a few people from different generations, and he was asking me about identity today, and do I identify with, like, is in my identity parts of, like, related to class or race or gender.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about how much all of that has shifted over the last few years,
Yeah.
post mental health crisis and healing, and then even grief. I think it's ever evolving, honestly. But I think also, like, the core of who I am is somebody who has always wanted to make a difference, always felt really connected to a sense of purpose, and that so much of that purpose was to experience darkness and then share my light with others.
Yeah.
And the face of that has changed so much over the years, just throughout the different experiences. But I think I still hold that pretty closely to my identity. But I think mostly just a human, who's really comfortable in my humanity and making mistakes, and showing other people how to do that too, and just how to kind of lean into what this human experience should be for all of us, which is just to have as good of an experience, have as much fun as possible, and to learn how to overcome whatever challenges uh, individually that we face, to become a part of a really strong collective. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think I really identify with that.
Have you always wanted to help people? Has it always been inherently in you since you was a child?
Yeah, I would say so. I remember one time I was probably like maybe 5, and I was crying in my bed because primarily I was raised by my maternal grandma.
Oh,
And my mom was on some trip she liked to take to California. We live in Oklahoma. And I think I was praying or something, and I just got really sad. And I just, like, felt this sense of, you're going to use this to help other people, like, at 5 years old. And then again at 14, I had a really surreal experience of, okay, so you're going to go through even more than you have thus far, which my dad died the next year. But
mm,
um and all of this is going to be used to help other people. So I have always felt very connected to that. some meaning out of things that I was experiencing just from a really young age. It felt really secure and safe to think there was a reason that I was experiencing the things that I was, and that I was going to get to determine how I wanted to use that.
It's a really odd feeling, and I can really relate to it, but it's a really odd feeling for a 5-year-old to think that in depth about something.
Mm-hmm.
And normally I would relate that to, I've met a lot of neurodivergent children that think that deeply about things. I've also met a lot of children, and I've been a neurodivergent child, and I've been a child that's gone through trauma. And I think I've met a lot of people that have gone through trauma that have thought that deeply at 5. I'm going to use this. Do you think the average child thinks that deeply about things, or do you think that that was just something that came from a place of comfort for you?
Average child? No, I don't think so.
I
I
would
don't think
hope
so.
not.
Yeah, I don't. I picture my 12-year-old who has not experienced the level of trauma that I did, nor even that her brothers did as a result of generational trauma.
Yeah,
But and she's very innocent and naive and about a lot of things. She's really kept so much of her innocence even at
I'm so
12,
glad.
which is
Yeah,
like such a source of pride for me.
yeah,
But I think to my very neurodivergent boys, and Jake, the child that I lost, he really felt that connection to a sense of purpose, and he was diagnosed uh, essentially high functioning autism,
yeah,
and was very ADHD. And then my oldest son also shows a lot of those traits too.
yeah,
Their dad is very obviously not diagnosed, but is so very obviously on the spectrum.
yeah,
But yeah, I think so much of that really is a trauma response, because you only get a few choices when a lot of choices being taken from you. And
mm,
the meaning that you assign to your experiences is one of the choices that you have. And I also think neurodivergent humans in general have this more expanded consciousness, I'll say. I mean,
yeah. We
like if
seem
you
to have like a justice thing, and there's a
Mhm.
lot of that going on.
Yes, absolutely. Like finding a cause very quickly. But I mean,
Yeah,
like listening to the telepathy tapes and hearing that these children were so like clairvoyant and whatever. I was mostly listening to that as I fell asleep, so I can't speak super intelligently to it. But I did listen to some of it, and I heard the overarching theme of it, and it was like, wow, so nonverbal doesn't mean anything other than they can't speak. There's so much processing happening that
yeah,
we're unaware of. But I kind of view all neurodivergence that way, that there's a lot of smoke screens. There's a lot behind the scenes that you don't see. So yeah, I think
yeah,
it could be relative to that, but I also think trauma really creates a level of hypervigilance that, like a lot of the things that people are like, I am psychic. And not that I don't believe in that, because I do, and I would claim that for myself even. But
mm,
I think so much of that sixth sense is created when you have to be hyper aware of everything in your environment from trauma.
100%. So when I grew up, do you remember Sabrina the Teenage Witch?
Yes.
I'm so glad that you remember. Right. So I used to watch Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and I was convinced that I had magical powers. I can't explain
Mm-hmm.
it. I always, when you think of someone and then you see them that same day and you hadn't seen them for years, that kind of
Yes.
crazy stuff. You have a dream about someone, you see them the next day. And there was just so many magical things that happened to me. I used to think, oh my God, like I've got some kind of power. Maybe I'm going to
Yeah.
find out the reason why on my 16th birthday. Like I couldn't comprehend what it was, but there was something. And I now know is actually probably pattern recognition and having that sixth sense, like you say, from the hypervigilance. I can't think that would explain why I would dream about someone and see them the next day, but a lot of that does explain my pattern recognition and my hypervigilance. And I know a lot of ADHD or neurodivergent people that say, oh, I thought I was psychic as a child, or I am kind of a little bit psychic abilitied. So yeah, I think that's really common as well.
Yeah, because I hear a lot of people, the one thing that will lead people to say, I'm psychic or something like that, is I can walk into a room and read everybody's energy. And I'm like, okay, tell me you were abused without telling me you were abused. Like, okay, so
This,
what I'm hearing is you had a
yeah,
parent that you were like a dog where you recognized the sound of their vehicle when they pulled into the driveway
yeah,
because you had to, because as soon as they got home, all hell broke loose. Like,
yeah. You were
I
treading
that's
on
what that is.
eggshells. Yeah,
Yes, yeah. And I'm like, and and I do believe in intuition. I do believe that some of those skill sets are inherent and that you have them and you use them in whatever way, but also pattern recognition is a real thing.
yeah. And I didn't know until I started learning more and more about. I didn't even know I was neurodivergent as a child. And then I've got three older children in their 20s. And when I had them, people kept approaching me and saying, you know, your child's autistic. And I used to be like, I was offended. Like, is that
Oh
really something?
yeah.
Is that really something you say? Like now, I'd never be
Why would
offended,
you
and I
say
probably
that?
tell other
Yes.
people that their child might be neurodivergent a lot. But I was offended at the time before I learnt about it, and then lo and behold, my children all got diagnosed with neurodivergence of some
Yeah.
sort, and that's what happened. But I used to think it was a real offensive thing.
Yeah, yeah, I did too. And so much of that was just fear and shame from my own
Yeah.
stuff. But I also, so nobody actually was approaching me about the possibility that Jake was autistic. They
Mm.
were all just talking about ADHD. Okay, so the only experience I had with an understanding of ADHD was their dad who was diagnosed that. My
Okay.
experience with that was, this is your excuse to tell me you forgot everything you're supposed to do for your family all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was
Exactly
so
that.
emotionally immature. I mean, I really was. I just had no understanding. The world didn't really have an understanding of it either at this time
Yeah.
because this is early 2000s.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I obviously recognized the signs and symptoms in the boys early, but I was like, they will not use a diagnosis as a crutch. And I was just so self
I don't
righteous
want to
about it.
pigeonhole them. And yeah,
Yes.
I've
Yeah.
done that.
Yeah. And you've got to figure it out. Whether you're diagnosed or not, you got to figure it out. And
We're
then
all
we
the
were
same. It
having
doesn't
such,
matter. Yeah.
exactly. But we were having such severe behavior issues with Jake at school.
Yeah.
Not mean behaviors, but just could not get it together.
Yeah.
And I started to see certain things without even having a single real understanding of autism or the spectrum in general. I started to see things and kind of investigating as much as I could. And I was like, this is more than ADHD. And
Mm.
I'm not going to go get a diagnosis for this and mask these symptoms and this never get figured out. Now, because of my own limitations as a human, I just tried to ignore it and just tried to, give him herbal stuff and create real regimens and structure at home and all of the things. It was the center of my being for his
Yeah.
entire school career. And now I get it. And I'm like, oh, but when somebody would approach me, I'd be like, just because your kid was diagnosed doesn't mean you need to diagnose my kid. And it's so
I,
embarrassing
I
now. It's
cringe
so
when I look back.
embarrassing. Yeah. But I didn't feel safe with this
Yeah.
challenge, and that was
Me too.
my trauma. I didn't feel safe being vulnerable. My closest friends, most of them didn't even know the challenges we were having with him at
Yeah.
school, at home, anything, because I didn't feel safe, because I felt ashamed that my child wasn't this perfect ideal of a child. Now, the oldest one learned to mask very early because he was an oldest child or an only child for 4.5 years.
Hmm.
And so he had a lot of adults. He had all of my attention. I was in school at the time, like I didn't get serious about college until I had him, and then I went to grad school, and I was pregnant with Jake in grad school. But he had a lot of adult attention and affirmation and a lot of criticism too. But like he was able to get that sense of I need to perform for love and belonging
Yeah.
essentially, and so he could mask a lot, and so he was performing, and he was in accelerated classes and whatever. And I
Yeah. Same with mine.
remember
Yeah.
some school counselor would be like, maybe Jake's just so smart and he's just bored, and in my head I'd be like, that babe, that's not it, honey, that
Yeah.
baby's not that smart. Next, because that's not it.
Yeah. So how many did you have? Have you got the three? How many do you have, like, children
Three kids.
wise?
Three kids.
Three.
So I
Did
had my two boys with my ex-husband who I met
Yeah.
at like 18 and a half. Got married at 20, had the boys, and then we divorced when I was like 29. And then I met my current husband, and we've been married since 2012, and we had a daughter together in 2014.
Oh, lovely. So you had a girl as well.
Yes.
It's nice, right?
It is. Yeah, it's different for sure. The boys never sassed me the way she does, but they also had no like safety to do that. So sometimes I just like am so happy that she feels so safe to be so
It's
rude and
such a
demanding. But
it's such a learning curve, because when I had my first three, who were boys, when I had my first three boys, they were a lot, and I was younger, and I made so many mistakes because I'm young, I'm neurodivergent, I'm struggling with mental health, bad relationships, and then I went on to have another one, who is now 9, and she's a girl, and then
uh,
uh, her personality is, she's so much more confident and nurtured, and that's because I was in such a, and regretfully so, I was in such a
yes,
different place when I had her to when I had my others.
yes, it's so different. In
It's
some
so different.
ways, my daughter got the worst version of me because I really, really, she was the only one that I was working full time. I took 3 months off when I had her,
Mm.
but I became very overwhelmed very quick. It had a real impact on my mental health, and then, um, yes, did some career changes, some stuff that just wasn't necessarily good for me, like to deal with my mental health stuff. And then I had a major mental health crisis. So really the last almost 3 years, well, about 2.5, um, I would say she's gotten the best version of me. They all
Yeah,
have, but there was so much more aggression. Like I never even really spanked them, but I was a screamer, and
I was
every last thing was a catastrophe. I had no coping skills. So she got a
yeah,
lot of aggression from me
yeah,
because she
I was a
had so
screamer.
many feelings.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah, it's that causes as much damage as anything else, but
yeah.
that's not what I was telling myself at the time. And I had such a limited capacity for change too. So, I mean, I've definitely forgiven myself for all that stuff, but I can see where that created a level of aggression in her, and um uh, maybe I can feel from her sometimes, even though she's so young, of like if I were try to be that aggressive with her now, I think she'd be my kid who actually like hit me or something, because
Yeah,
I think I was that aggressive that
yeah,
like it really impacted her.
yeah, I get
And
that.
honestly, I mean, obviously it's so like such a source of pain if I really let it be, but also again, I've forgiven myself. I just try really hard to do better now. I just don't behave that way anymore, but I have a lot more tools too.
How did you manage? So it's something I really struggle with, and everyone says parental guilt is something that they struggle with, but I feel like it's really is the bane of my life. It's the thing that keeps me up in the night. If anyone asks me what's my one big issue, that is that I've had a lot of trauma in my life from childhood, sexual abuse and stuff like that. But my motherhood guilt is like the one thing that eats me up. How did
Mm.
you? How did you get rid of that?
Honestly, I mean, it's not like gone 100%. Like, I still have times where I'll wake up in the middle of the night and think of something that keeps me up for an hour, but I'm
Yeah.
able to move through it. I really believe because of like spirituality,
Yeah.
where I feel like I'm really conscious of the fact that, well, first of all, this is the number one tenet of spirituality that really helps me with my mother guilt, truly, is that I have a belief that we chose this experience and that we
Hmm.
picked our parents. And so that's the like thing I fall back on. Anytime it's getting just a little too much, I'm like, well, they picked me. They knew what struggles they were signing up
That's a
for.
really good way to rationalize.
It really does help. I'm serious. It really does help. And then also, I think when you start to really cultivate love for yourself as a human, because my
And
identity,
compassion.
yeah, my identity doesn't really, like, when you asked who is Melissa, um, who I am as a mom is not me. Like, that's just some part of me, but that's not me. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so I think I don't view, and I used to very much, like, my identity as mom was front and center. But I think just from some narcissistic, emotionally immature place, because I thought it had to be, because I didn't know who I was and I didn't know what else I was contributing to the world per
Yeah.
se. But like, I don't, I just don't believe that I have to hold myself to some cross of perfectionism to be accountable. So I view my interactions and experiences as a mother the same as I do in anything else, to where I say, okay, how did that go? How do I feel now that that moment's over? And if I don't like the way it went, or I don't like the way I'm feeling, I say, what would I do differently next time? How am I going to
Yeah.
approach this different next time? Because I'm so full of worth and value and love and compassion for myself, that I know what I deserve is nothing but the best. And I don't deserve shame, and I don't deserve crucifixion. What I deserve is evolution and growth and
Yeah.
real change. And shame does not lead to real change. It might give you a momentary change of perspective or motivation, maybe even discipline. Sometimes it can help get you a little temporary hit of any of those things, but it does not lead to lasting change. And so once I really learned how to rid myself of shame in general, that was really the key, because I know what that looks like and I don't do that to myself. So I understand we are all humans and doing our best. And then the more compassion I was able to give myself, then I could extend that to my parents, who had done really harmful things to me and caused a lot of trauma in my life. And then my grandma, who was primarily responsible for raising me, she was a god awful narcissist too. Like, it was really like, I feel like she caused me more damage than even the physical and emotional abuse from my parents, or even the sexual abuse that they caused by leaving me with strangers.
Yeah.
But I'm able to release that because I see me in them and I see them in me. And I know how you get to this place where you take everything so personally, even though this is your child and you're supposed to care about them more than you care about yourself. And, all of these things. I just released the shame. And so much of what you're describing is not guilt as much as it's shame, because guilt says I did something bad. Shame says I, as a human, am bad. And I don't believe we at our core are bad at all. I
Yeah.
believe all of us are redeemable, and if we were to connect to that higher sense of self, we're all beautiful, wonderful, perfect, exactly how we are, because we're supposed to make a lot of mistakes. So I just tell myself, well, that's just one of those things that they'll have to overcome, and I'll pay for therapy.
Yeah. And I do. Yeah.
Me
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. And it's expensive. Honestly, do you feel like this is a recent revelation that you've had for yourself, or is this since losing Jake that you found this sense of is a lot of things changed since then? It must put the biggest stuff into perspective.
Well, actually, I'm really quite lucky because I went through a whole spiritual awakening and healing process 2 years before well, about a year and a half. It was like every day I'm having these huge epiphanies, and my paradigm shifting. I feel this complete unraveling of who I am and coming back together, this new person all the time for
So
a
he
year
got
and a
to
half.
see that new person.
Yes,
I'm so glad.
yes.
Yeah.
Me too. And so, yeah, I had all these tools at my disposal when I lost him. So, I mean, that's really how I've gotten through this. That and the spirituality and believing like he chose me. And I always lean on, it's not that I don't have those moments of remorse and regret as his mom, but because I know like the logical conclusion is sure, there's hundreds of things that I could have done differently, should have done differently, and likely would have led to a different outcome. If I
Yeah.
had different understandings. Well, for instance, getting him diagnosed in early childhood would have been a fucking great thing, but I didn't. So I have to live with those things. But I have to tell myself, like, okay, you don't know for sure that it would have changed the outcome. He chose this experience. I believe that now where he is, he has an understanding of the things he can understand here. And I also am like, well, do I deserve to live the rest of my life in that space of remorse and regret? Or do I deserve a life that I was already on track for, of full of love and joy and peace
Yeah.
and abundance? And I don't believe that because I made a lot of mistakes as a parent that I deserve to die in a bath of remorse and regret. I don't believe that. I believe I deserve nothing but the finest things that this life has to offer. And that's what I'm in pursuit of. So, in some ways, grief really has highlighted for me stuff that I was already semi aware of, but like kind of gave me no choice but to address.
Yeah.
So, very pattern recognition stuff where I'm like, oh, I was dealing with that before, but now I have no choice but to not self abandon. Like, my capacity and tolerance are so much lower than they used to be. Like, I did over 50 podcasts for other people last year, and you might be my second one this whole year. So like I'm at a reduced capacity.
You're
So it forces
Is
me
it
to
because you're
confront.
putting them boundaries?
I just don't have the energy for it. Like well, a lot of times I would say yes because I would feel well, I was first of all trying to get a lot of exposure for my own
Mm.
podcast, but I would feel maybe like a sense of inflation that I was being asked to be on someone else's show. And now I'm like, that's sweet, but I don't have the energy for that.
Yeah.
So like I would push past energy boundaries then.
Yeah.
I can't now. I literally cannot. I have to take naps when I need them and stuff like that. But also, yeah, it doesn't really feed my ego to be asked the way it did last year. Like I'm like,
Yeah.
okay,
So
like
the
it's
novelty
weird to
wore
say
off.
that. Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. Well, and so yeah, I think ultimately what it boils down to is that I think that all humans deserve to forgive themselves for all of the mistakes that we make. And I know the level of resistance that people feel when I say that sometimes because I feel it when I say it to them. But
Yeah.
we have been taught and programmed to believe that accountability is perfectionism, that you have to beat yourself to death every time you make a mistake, and that's the only way to learn and grow from it. And then we apply that standard to other people too. So every time someone we love makes a mistake, we're holding them to the standard of perfection, and we're like, no, you didn't, it must mean something about me that you didn't meet this expectation. And so I think honestly, just getting all that spiritual evolution and expanded consciousness prior to losing him was the best gift that I gave
Do you
myself.
think that, do you know, when I think of life, I think of it like that, you know, at the time you thought, how do I put it? You know, do you feel like maybe God or whoever put you through that spiritual awakening before you lost him so that you could be, so you could cope after?
Yeah, I absolutely. Yeah, because I wouldn't have made it otherwise. If I didn't have
Yeah.
the spiritual beliefs that I have and believe that I chose this experience and signed up, if I believed, should I?
I've lost you a
Okay,
little
you're still
bit.
there. Okay.
It says reconnecting.
Am I there now?
Your face
Yeah, it said
isn't,
that to me
your
too.
voice is.
Oh, really?
Oh no, you're back.
Okay, okay. Sorry about that. I don't know why it's
Okay.
giving us such fits. Um, so yeah, I if I believed that a higher power was doing this to me or even for me, that would be different, but I believe that this was all chosen by me in my spirit form before I came here, and that this was a pact we had made as a little spirit family before. Like, I believe you choose the people that you're going to do this life with, like the main people, your
Hmm.
parents, your siblings, your children. And so for me, I believe I chose it. I do believe all of the spirituality unfolded exactly the way it was supposed to, that it came along right at the time I was supposed to.
Hmm.
But even just like a week before he died, I had a feeling he was using something more than marijuana, but like I didn't know. But I was having a lot of fear about like finding him. And so that had been an off.
I have that big fear as well.
I had it for like off and on for a couple of years. When he had started doing really well his last little bit of high school, well, he had gotten in a lot of legal trouble. And so he was doing well on probation, whatever, got off probation, graduated high school, things were doing really well. So the fear had kind of subsided. But the week before, I was just kind of really afraid, and I was really sitting with myself. And I was working on barriers between me and others, and specifically my husband. Like,
Mm.
how I was still having trouble trusting after all these years and what that was. And I realized, okay, I'm having trouble trusting myself. Like, this is that whole I'm not enough narrative that we all have. And so I really just walked through the steps like, okay, so what are you actually afraid of? If you give everything, if you go all in with your husband, what are you actually afraid of? And I was like, well, I'm afraid he'll die, because losing my dad at 15 really messed me up in that way.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say he dies. What are you afraid of? Like, obviously, it would suck, but what are you afraid of? I'm afraid that I will become homeless, that I won't be able to sustain, taking care of the kids. And I'm afraid I'll die. I'm afraid it'll just break me, that'll be the thing that breaks me. And then I said, okay, is that true? And I was like, no, it's not true. I know that I'm enough. Like, no matter what. Like, would it suck? Yeah. Would it be awful? Would there be trials and tribulations? Yes, but I'm enough. So
Yeah.
once I realized like nothing's going to kill me, that was a big step. But I sat there and I then related this to Jake, and I was like, okay, so what if Jake dies? Are you enough? And I was like, yeah, I'm enough. And I decided that the week before. So that's kind of what I've held on to, and
That's,
that you can hold this profound pain and grief at the same time that you're pursuing profound joy and love and fun and peace and greatness. Like, you can do both at the same time. So I think that gets a little tricky for people watching from the outside, because sometimes I am crying a lot, and sometimes I'm posting very sad stuff on social media, and then other times I'm doing neither of those things and I'm just like having a good day. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Or a good week, whatever the case may be, whatever it may be. And no matter what it looks like on the outside, it's all happening at the same time, all the time. So I got to where I kind of explained, like, I'm good, I'm okay, I'm just not fine. There's still
Yeah.
lots of things. Like, PTSD is very real when you find your child in their bedroom after you've been fearing this their whole life. Like, it's very scary. And it has rocked my sense of safety to my core. Like, I hear the tiniest noise and I go into full blown panic within 30 seconds that something's wrong with one of my animals or one member of my family. And it happens all the time and it's frustrating, but I'm just repairing my nervous system and doing all the things that you have to do to deal with PTSD.
Yeah, I get that. So my life's always been really hectic and I've always worried about the children because my life's been hectic. It always had a knock-on effects on their mental health, obviously. And over the years we've had depression and addiction and lots of things that have come out for it. And I profoundly blame myself for quite a lot of it. And I think now my life's going really well and everything's going really well. I am constantly worried that something is going to
Yeah.
happen to them all the time. I check on in their room about 10 times a night. I mean, one of them is in Egypt now. One of them lives with their dad. You know, they're in their 20s, but I'm checking in their room. I'm envisioning I'm going to find something awful. So when
Mhm.
I saw you on your podcast, I just it's a lot. It's a lot. And what do you have any advice?
Just for the fear?
Yeah.
Dealing with the fear, you mean? Yeah. Well, so much of what you're describing is a nervous system that doesn't feel safe when things are going their way.
Yeah.
Your survival all those years depended on bad stuff happening and you responding. You were never taught that it was safe to be happy or safe to be nurtured or nourished or to love yourself or to receive. So your nervous system really is wired to look for the bad things in your environment and protect you. So this is just a protective factor that you're
Yeah.
experiencing, and all of our brains are designed to fill in the blanks. It needs certainty. That's the way it keeps us alive, and it does that by filling it in from the most negative perspective,
Yeah.
because it literally is trained to scan the environment for danger 24/7. That's the only way it knows how to keep us alive. And so, our job is to create the safest home inside of ourselves as possible. And every time that fear comes, staying with the fear and letting it pass on its own without feeding it a bunch of stories around it. Because listen, I've been there. I know what it's like to sit around thinking about these things for hours. I mean, the reason I had to have that whole talk with myself that week is because I was planning the boy's funeral. I mean, that happened all the time. Like, I worried about him. I always said, as long as we keep him off heroin, which he wasn't using heroin. He thought he was buying a, a different thing and bought something that was manufactured that had stuff in it that was really
Yeah.
bad and killed him
Yeah.
immediately. But I always knew this was going to be a problem for him. Drugs were going to be a problem for him.
See,
And
I
I just
have a
felt really
similar
young.
thing. My children all have ADHD. They, you know, and I'm not blaming that primarily, but they have addictive personalities. This is one of the major things that we've struggled with over the years as well. So I completely understand that.
Yeah, and the fear is real. I mean, believe
Yeah.
me, I had a lot of people reach out that kind of hadn't shared some of their experiences, but I've been very open about ours since losing him. So I've heard a lot of stories, and my heart just like hurts for people because I know that fear very intimately, and it, like, honestly, I don't know if you know which episodes you've listened to or whatever, but honestly, when I found him, I took a deep breath and like exhaled, like, okay, well, I don't have to be afraid anymore. I mean, I would obviously do anything to get him back, but in that moment, the sense of relief was so real, and I have not felt that level of stress since losing him, because the worst happened. The thing that I spent every minute of every day trying to prevent, we're here. So, like, okay. And I know how terrible that can sound to people who don't understand.
No,
And I am not saying I'm glad
I
he's
get
gone
that,
at
and that's,
all.
I get
Like,
that.
yeah. I mean, the worst happened. What else? Like, what else am I going to stress about? You know, I mean, sure, you could stress about lots of things, but my shoulders haven't felt as
No,
heavy since
not,
the moment I
yeah,
found him because I don't have to like sit around worrying about that all day, every day anymore. But I just had to get into these practices where, like, I was really just like, hey, right now we are safe. Everything is safe. Like, we have no evidence to tell us that the worst case scenario is going to happen. And I have to do that a lot now because my nervous system's like, guess what? People really do die. And
yeah,
you're reminded of that fact. And honestly, the weirdest part is that so much of it pops up with my stupid dogs. I worry more about them than anybody else. Like, it's like this visceral response, and it's bizarre. But
yeah.
like, I check my husband's breathing every morning. Every morning I put my hand over, make sure he's alive. The two other kids are not really nappers, but if they sleep a little too late, I'm like, just making sure you're alive. And we're all very open about that
You
because
are the only
we all
person
have the PTSD.
that I've met that says that. So my dad is OCD, very OCD, and we now realise it. You know, he's autistic and lots of other things, but he's nearly 80. But all the way through our childhood, specifically mine, he would wake us up in the night to check we were breathing. And by the time I had
Yeah.
my little sister, my mum made him get a mirror so he could check her breath on the mirror. And I have
So he
gone
wasn't
on.
waking her up.
No, so he wasn't waking her up. But I just remembered it being something that a loving parent does. They wake you up to check your breathing. And all through my children's life as well, I have done the same. I'll wake them just to check their breathing. And you're the only person that I've met that says that that is a thing.
Oh, yeah, that's hypervigilance. It's another face of hypervigilance. It's another trauma response. I mean, when you don't feel safe in your body or in your environment or in your experiences, that's the stuff you'll do. What tells me, like, it sounds like your dad experienced a really huge loss of something. I don't know if he lost a person at a young age, but he lost something, like a house to a fire, whatever it is. Like, those really big losses will create this fear of connection.
Yeah,
Connection's not safe. And so, it's kind of like you getting to this place now where life is kind of good, but that's not safe for you. Good isn't safe. So now you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, you're like,
yeah,
okay, where's the bad? And that's what checking to make sure your loved ones are still alive is I'm so afraid to love you as much as I do
yeah.
because it
It
will break me if something happens to you.
Yeah, it is a constant thing, but that's why I understand when you said about when you found Jake and you've the, the thought that you thought was the worst has happened, because that is
Mhm.
that fear every day of me. You know, sometimes I get scared to walk in their room in case, you know, something bad's
Yep.
happened, or so I get that. 100% what you mean. Is that a real regular thing for parents? Have you had parents in your same situation say that they felt that kind of relief? I'm hesitant to say relief, but you know what I mean.
Right. It's the only word that fits, but yeah. Um I don't know a lot of parents in my situation. So, um but I when I went to a grief group, I didn't go to a child loss one cuz my oldest son wouldn't go without me, and so I just went to like a normal one with him. And it
Yeah,
ended up being really fun that we went together, so I was fine with that. But and also the child loss space, they especially when we're dealing with like any sort of like overdose stuff, like in this way where somebody sold them something dirty like that, there's a lot of anger and I'm not there. So I'm like,
yeah,
okay, that feels really overwhelming to my nervous system for you to have such big feelings that you're now expressing to me. Like, I can't handle that.
yeah.
um so I don't know a lot of parents in this, but even like when we went to make the funeral arrangements, that the director that helped us, he his son, he's
I've
still
lost you
alive.
a little bit.
Okay.
Are you coming back? Let me see.
Yes, it says it's connecting.
Okay.
Am I back?
You are back.
Okay. So the funeral director was talking to us about struggles he had with his son, and he named relief right away too. Like, I imagine that it feels like this. And I was like, yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm just going to become vulnerable enough to say that to people because I know how it can be perceived, but I've
Not, I
never
don't
felt
think
a
by
fear
anyone,
like
by anyone that's had that feeling, I can't, I get that so much. Like, I can't even explain to you how much I understand how that would feel. So yes,
yeah.
it's definitely, but talking about it in general being cathartic over the last however long, or is it hard?
Um, no, it's not hard. I think it's really natural for me to talk about. I guess maybe it's not natural. It's a choice for
Yeah,
sure. Hard in the sense that it's vulnerable, but not like it's hard to talk about him. I
yeah,
don't like I don't like to cry in front of other people. That's been who I am always. But over the last couple of years, trying to become more emotionally available and vulnerable, I do that on purpose. I will make myself like allow it. But I still don't like it. Like, it's something I actively work on, is in real time sharing things with people. So that part of it is a little tricky because there's so much vulnerability in it. I love permission, full permission to talk about him or any part of this experience. So no, I think that's a misconception actually about grief, is that it's too hard for people to talk about, so we don't want to bring it up, or we get
yeah.
awkward when
So
they bring it
we've
up.
already spoke about that, you and I, haven't I? Because
Yes.
I read your pod match profile and it said about losing your son, and I started to write you a message, and I said, that's the only thing and the first thing that I can mention. I can't put that at the end of my message. That is the most important thing. I can't leave that out. Like, you can't leave that out. But when I messaged you and I said, I'm so sorry, and then I sent you the rest of the message and everything, and you said some people just don't acknowledge it. And I find that
You're the
absolutely
first
crazy.
person that has. Yeah. Yeah. I was like, it
That,
was such like a, I was like, oh, it must be meant to be to come on the show because you mentioned it. And I'm like, hey,
but that's
people, I
so
don't put
fucking
that in my
alien to
profile for
me.
no reason. Yeah, but people are very grief phobic, and they have these assumptions that like it's too hard, or I wouldn't want them to bring it up because people think that you maybe are having a moment in your life where you forgot your kid died, and then they're going to
Exactly.
talk
It's
about
not
it,
like
and now
you
all of a
weren't
sudden you
thinking about it
remember.
anyway.
Right. I'm like, this, no, trust me, it's weird how it can be like one whole half of your brain is constantly like, Jake died. And then the other half is doing whatever you're doing. It's
Yeah.
always there,
Yeah.
always. But yeah, no, so for me, it's not hard to talk about him at all. But there are those days where I'm more emotional about things. And so I'll cry a lot more or whatever, and that's harder for me, for one, energetically, but also then I'm all, being all vulnerable and crying in front of people, so
Yeah. You've spoke about your own experience of complex trauma, and you've had personal stuff going on. But do you feel like the spirituality thing that you went through, that was like a major like turning point, more than any therapy could have given you? Do you feel like that was a kind of a real epiphany and a real awakening for you?
well, I actually think that it paved the way for real psychological growth too, because
Yeah.
spirituality, if done correctly, gives you the type of perspective needed to be able to step away from the ego and see the truth of situations. My whole life, because of CPTSD, I had pretty much created a real identity of victimhood, even though I would have said otherwise and did not see it. I absolutely did, by believing that other people didn't love me the way I loved them, that nobody
Yeah.
showed up for me the way that I showed up for them, that nobody could see me or understand me or hold me. Those were all things that I created and projected in order to protect myself from connection.
I think I've done
So,
that. Yeah.
oh yeah, I mean it's really common, and I'm constantly saying, like, we have to, as humans, make our outer world match our inner world. So if we're still operating from those subconscious patterns and stories that were programmed into us, then our outer world, we're going to self-sabotage every good thing in order to make it match that inner world. So that was something that I was doing a lot of without realizing. So spirituality helped me lose some ego. Not all of it, obviously, but lose enough to be able to kind of see a different perspective and see, like, oh, first of all, I'm not as smart as I think I am. And I need to grow up. I need to
Yeah.
grow up, and I need to learn how to take accountability for my own feelings. And so it really, I was open then to get the right information to help me quit living in shame and to start to really truly love myself. Spirituality did help me understand that the only true love is the love that you cultivate within, and then you share from the overflow of that. And like being in love with another person romantically, first of all, really is just a bunch of chemical reactions, but also it's them in their love and you in your love, and this beautiful little, convergence of two people's loves for themselves. That's why a lot of relationships don't work, because people don't love themselves correctly. And so really, like, rebranding that word selfish and making it mean something totally different than what I was raised to believe that it means, I think that was really helpful. But yeah, I think spirituality just let me lose some ego enough to be able to receive information that was actually really helpful. I personally love the intersection of psychology and spirituality.
I've lost you a little bit.
It's, I don't know why my internet's being like this.
You might come back in. You might come back. It says
Saying it's reconnecting.
reconnect it. It goes reconnecting like a robot.
The worst internet that I have. I have a worse one, but this never happens, so it must not like us talking together. But
Oh,
oh,
I
no.
think you're back again.